Welcome to the next edition of Oh My Gosh, What Did These Guys Develop For Us Now? Otherwise known as the release video for 0.8.23. I'm going to start with the good-looking stuff. The Modifier Bucket. Nick reskinned this, and man, does it look pretty. And while he was working on it, he internationalized almost all of it. We just need help with the actual language translations. We've added a slam calculator. You use the chat command /slam and enter in the values. If you have targeted your opponent and bring up the slam calculator, it will fill in the information from that character. But of course, you can override any of these values and then press resolve. You can see the math for the calculation. This is currently based on the basic set rules. Nick is going to implement the DFRPG rules in a future release. I've alluded to it in the past, but I'm now going to show you some of the power of the resource trackers. Here is Lady Serial, and she uses a shield. And in this game, we keep track of shield hit points. So you can do that with a resource tracker. We'll go into the system setting and view and edit trackers. I want to create a new tracker for shields. So I've created this resource tracker, called it Shield. I've given it an alias SH. I'll show you what that's for later. And then I want to use it as a damage type. And this means that I can select it from the damage dialog and apply damage directly to it. Now the thresholds down here, they're just for visual representation of what this resource is at. And you can, basically you program it. It starts from the top and goes down. And if any of these are true, then that's the color. So this is greater than or equal to the maximum value times 1. So if it's at max, it's white. If it's between 1.5, then it's going to be red. If it's below half but above 0, then it's going to be whatever this color is. And then if it's less than or equal to 0, then it's going to be black. And you can select a tracker slot that it will default to when you create new characters. In this case, I don't need to. And here you can put the initializer to give you the starting current value. Control Points uses strength, but shield is going to be different for each player. So now I'll go to Lady Serial and add that resource tracker. There's shield, and I'll copy the template. So I'll edit the tracker, and here I can put in its values. I honestly don't know the hit points for a shield, so I'm just going to make some stuff up. Here it's 10 hit points with a maximum of 10 hit points. That's great. So let's apply that. This goblin's going to do some damage, and let's say he aimed specifically for the shield and did 1 point of damage. So we'll drag it onto Lady Serial, and you can select the shield resource tracker from this menu right here. So this will apply 1 point of damage to the shield. Then if we look at Lady Serial's shield, it is now 9 points of damage. And of course, my coloration is a little weird. And now I'll show you what that alias is for. Here's the on-the-fly formula to do 2D damage, and the damage type is now SH. So I'll create a button for that, and I'll roll it. And you can see it's SH damage. Now if I drag this onto a character, it automatically selects the shield resource tracker because that's the alias for shield. Cool, huh? And some quick little things we've added. The quick note editor now supports multiple lines, and it will just expand the character sheet to make them fit. The everyone chat command only affects the player characters that are in the current scene. We merged in XR's damage reduction injury tolerance code, and we changed the major wound HT roll if it's half damage. It's HT plus 3. We made the attribute parsing for on-the-fly formulas case insensitive. So now you can have lowercase will or this freaky fright check, and it will execute. And we added an interesting request to the on-the-fly formulas. You can now change the text of the button. Basically, you can just replace the text of the button. You start the on-the-fly formula with some quote, either double quotes or single quotes, and it must be the first thing inside the square brackets. And then after that, you can have any on-the-fly formula, and the text in the quotes will appear as the button. So this look at the muscles button will actually roll strength. And you can do it with any complex on-the-fly formula. This is my most complex formula that I use for testing. and this is the same formula, but it just has the word as above. And so when we save it, this is the formula normally, and this is the exact same formula, but it just says as above. We've added the ability for you to enter in your own initiative formula. This is our formula here, and it calculates the value specified by the basic set. Yeah, it looks a little funny, but what it does is it takes basic speed and then the dex value and then a d6. So if two characters have the same basic speed, then it'll go to their dex value, and if they have the same dex value, then it is a 1d6 that is rolled. And you can edit this if you want. There's the formula. We don't do any parsing on this, so if you mess it up, your best bet is to just delete it, and then we will reset it back to the factory default. So how would you use this? Well, let's say you play with a different turn order calculation. And your turn order calculation is just the basic speed plus a d6 plus some bonus if they have combat reflexes and another bonus if they make their tactics roll. Well, this requires a little setup because this additional resources CRB, combat reflexes bonus, and additional resources TAC don't exist in our system. But with script macros, you can make them exist. The GM could execute this macro one time, and it goes through all of the actors in the system and uses this function, find, add, disadd, to see if that actor has the combat reflexes advantage. And if so, it sets the CRB bonus to 1, and then, of course, writes out a chat message. And then these two lines actually update the system, storing CRB, which is either going to be 0 or 1, and then tactics of 0. So I'm going to execute it against all of the actors in my system. Okay, well, what about tact? Well, tactics is a skill, and you only want to get that bonus if you successfully make that skill roll. So we have two other scripts that the GM can execute. Turn on tactics and, of course, turn off tactics. And this will set the additional resources tact value to 1, or when it's turned off to 0. Lady Serial has tactics, and let's say she makes her roll. The GM could turn on tactics for Lady Serial. So now let's see what that looks like in the combat tracker. I'm going to reset the initiative and roll it. And using the new formula, you can see that Bog received a +1 because of his combat reflexes. Nobody else did. And Lady Serial received a +1 because of her tactics. Of course, the GM has to remember to turn tactics back off for Lady Serial. So select Lady Serial and turn off tactics. You don't have to do this, comma. I use Siri way too much. You don't have to use this, but here's an example of how you could. We also provide the function find skill spell and find attack. If you want to change your initiative formula to just give a bonus if you have the tactics skill, you could execute it this way, and it will find all characters with the combat reflexes advantage and the tactics skill. This last feature is most useful for people who self-host Foundry. If you export your characters either from GCS or GCA into the Foundry data directory, then we can shorten the import cycle. I'll show you what I mean. So here's this character, Luna, that I have in GCS. I'm going to export to Foundry, and I'm going to navigate to the Foundry data directory. So here's the data directory, and in here I created a subdirectory called characters, and I'm going to export Luna here. Now in Foundry, I'm going to create a new character and import it. Okay, that looks the same. Nothing fancy. But one of the nice things about exporting from GCS is that it will include the portrait. So if I click on the portrait and go into the characters directory, there's the Luna portrait. So I can add her directly in. Now here's the speed up. If I change Luna, let's say I'm going to go in and give her a perception of 19, just for snicks and giggles. And I'll export to the same location. When I get to Foundry, I can just press the import button, and it doesn't have to bring up the file dialog. So when I press import, you should see your perception change to 19. If you delete the file from the Foundry data directory and do an import, it will go back to the old import dialog and ask you to find the right file someplace. Assuming you always export to the same place and the file name doesn't change, you can just export from your favorite creation tool, come into Foundry, and click the import button to make certain you're up to date. By the way, you probably already know this, but things like resource trackers, these are not overwritten by an import because they don't come from the character creation tool. And those new values we created for combat reflexes and tactics, those are in the additional resources area, which is the same area where trackers are. And that whole additional resources data structure is not overwritten during an import. So if your characters change and gain or lose combat reflexes or tactics, you'll have to go and re-execute this script. And of course, we included bug fixes. There was a problem where some browsers, the modifier bucket would close if you picked on a pull-down menu. There was another situation where the module, the furnace, was interfering with our code. So I changed our code so it works better, and then we fixed the explosion damage calculation. And there, of course, were a bunch of little minor tweaks here and there. And that's it for this release. Hopefully there's a few things in there that you like. And as always, thank you for watching.